You know that specific, sinking feeling when you realize your neighbor isn't just quirky, but is actually a domestic terrorist in orthopedic shoes? Yeah, that was me last Tuesday. I was standing in my bathrobe, clutching a half-eaten everything bagel like a stress ball, staring at the raw, colorful wires dangling from my doorframe. They looked like severed nerves. 10 feet away, Mrs. Gable was deadheading her petunias with the precision of a surgeon and the soul of a shark. She didn't look up. She didn't have to. She knew exactly what I was looking at because the empty screw holes in the stucco where my doorbell camera used to be were vibrating with her specific frequency of crazy. My camera was gone. Again. But this time, I wasn't going to call the cops to file a report they would ignore. Not yet. This time, I had buried a digital landmine inside the plastic casing, and Mrs. Gable had just pulled the pin. But to understand why a grown man would weaponize a doorbell, we have to go back to the beginning. We have to go back to the moment I signed the deed on the charming fixer-upper at 42 Elm Street, a decision that ranks right up there with buying sushi from a gas station or trusting a fart after a kale smoothie. I bought the house because I wanted a project. I wanted that American dream of taking something broken and making it whole. I wanted to stand on a mahogany deck I built with my own 2 hands, holding a beer, looking out over a manicured lawn. The realtor, a woman named Linda, who smelled like peppermint schnapps and desperation, told me the neighborhood was quiet. She said it was established. She neglected to mention that established was code for ruled by a geriatric warlord with a clipboard. The move-in day was hot. Not just warm, but that sticky, suffocating humidity that makes your shirt cling to your back like a second skin. I was wrestling a leather sofa through the front door, sweating profusely, when I felt a presence. You know how you can feel when a predator enters the ecosystem? The birds stop singing. The wind dies down. You're scratching the jam. I froze. I pivoted, the couch digging into my hip, and there she was, Mrs. Gable. She was a small woman, maybe 5 foot nothing, with hair that was sprayed into a helmet of gray steel that could likely deflect small-caliber fire. She wore a floral blouse that looked innocent enough, but her eyes? Her eyes were assessing my moral character based on the sweat stains on my t-shirt. "Excuse me?" I wheezed, adjusting my grip. "The door jamb," she said, pointing a manicured finger. "You scuffed the paint. White semi-gloss. It looks tacky." She didn't introduce herself. She didn't offer a casserole. She didn't welcome me to the neighborhood. She simply critiqued my furniture moving skills. "I'm Jack," I said, trying to be charming. "I just bought the place." "I know," she replied. She pulled a clipboard from behind her back, like a gunslinger drawing a 6-shooter. "I'm Mrs. Gable. I live next door, and I'm the president of the architectural committee." She clicked a pen. It sounded like a gunshot. "While you're here," she continued, not looking up from her paper, "your trash cans were left out until 8 a.m. this morning. Pickup is at 6:30. They need to be behind the fence by 7:30. That's a violation. Also, that truck," she pointed to the U-Haul. "It's been idling for 4 minutes. The limit is 3. Noise pollution. And..." She squinted at my front lawn. "Is that crabgrass?" I stared at her. I literally just unlocked the door, Mrs. Gable. I haven't even unpacked a spoon." "Standards, Jack," she said, finally looking me in the eye. It was a cold, flat stare. "We have standards here. Don't let the property values slide just because you're young." She turned and marched back to her house, her posture rigid, leaving me standing there with a couch halfway up my shins and a creeping realization that I had just moved next to a prison warden. The war didn't start immediately. It was a slow burn. It was a war of attrition. For the first week, it was small things. I'd come home to find notes taped to my front door. Grass height exceeds 2.5 inches. Curtains are not white-lined. Visitor parked 3 inches from curb. I tried to ignore it. I really did. I had bigger fish to fry. The house was a gut job. I needed to tear out the kitchen, redo the wiring, and fix a master bathroom that hadn't been updated since the Carter administration. I needed help, I needed a contractor. Enter Sully. If Mrs. Gable was an immaculately pruned bonsai tree of hate, Sully was an oak tree that had been struck by lightning and didn't care. He was 6'4", shaped like a refrigerator, and communicated primarily in grunts and heavy sighs. He drove a Ford F-250 that sounded like a dying dragon and leaked oil as a territorial marker. "Nice place," Sully grunted the first morning he arrived. Typum, looking at the peeling wallpaper in the hallway. "If you like living in a dump." "It has potential, Sully," I said, handing him a coffee. "That's why I hired you." "Yeah, well," he took a sip. "Hope you got deep pockets. This wiring is a fire hazard waiting for a place to happen. And your plumbing looks like it was installed by a drunk octopus." We walked outside to get his tools. Sully had backed his massive truck into my driveway, the tailgate hanging slightly over the sidewalk. Just slightly, maybe 6 inches. As we were unloading the table saw, I saw the curtains twitch next door. "Oh no," I muttered. "What?" Sully asked, lifting a tool bag that probably weighed more than me with one hand. "The neighbor, the Goblin Queen." Mrs. Gable emerged. She didn't walk. She materialized. She was wearing a different floral blouse today. This one with aggressive daisies. She marched down her driveway, clipboard in hand. "Excuse me," she shouted. "Excuse me." Sully stopped. He looked down at her. It was like a bear looking at a yapping chihuahua. "Yeah?" Sully rumbled. "You cannot park that monstrosity blocking the public right-of-way," she snapped, tapping her pen against the clipboard. "It's an ADA violation. It's a safety hazard. Move it immediately or I'm calling the city to have it towed." Sully blinked. He looked at the truck. He looked at the sidewalk. There was plenty of room for a person to walk by. A parade could have walked by. "Lady," Sully said, his voice like gravel in a blender. "I'm unloading. Takes 5 minutes. Relax." "Do not tell me to relax," Mrs. Gable shrieked. Her face went from pale to a splotchy red. "I am on the board." "I know the ordinances. You are obstructing a thoroughfare." She whipped out her phone. She started taking pictures. Click, click, click. She took a picture of the license plate. She took a picture of the tire. She took a picture of Sully's face. "Hey!" Sully stepped forward. "Quit with the photos." "Evidence!" she yelled. "I'm documenting this aggression." I stepped in between them. "Mrs. Gable, please. He's just getting his tools. He'll move it in 2 minutes." She turned the camera on me. "Accomplice," she muttered. "Unauthorized commercial activity in a residential zone. I'm adding this to the file." She turned and stormed back inside. Sully looked at me. He spit on the ground. "You bought a house next to that?" "I didn't know," I said, feeling the headache start behind my eyes. "You're gonna need a bigger fence," Sully said. "And maybe a priest." That was the moment I decided to install the security system. I needed proof. If she was going to build a file on me, I was going to build a digital archive on her. I went to the hardware store that afternoon and bought the top-of-the-line doorbell camera. 1080p video, motion detection, night vision, two-way audio. I spent 2 hours installing it, drilling into the stucco, wiring it into the chime. I felt safer. I felt like I had a sentry. I pulled up the app on my phone. The view was crisp. I could see my porch, my lawn, the street, and yes, the edge of Mrs. Gable's driveway. I showed Sully the next day. "Eye in the sky," I said proudly. Sully squinted at the little black device. "She ain't gonna like that." "She doesn't have to like it," I said, feeling a surge of constitutional righteousness. "It's my property. It's for my safety." Sully just shook his head and went back to tearing down my kitchen cabinets with a crowbar. "Poke the bear," he muttered. "Get the claws." He was right. God, he was right. 2 days later, the police showed up. I was in the middle of a Zoom call with my boss, trying to explain why the quarterly projections were late, when my front door shook with a heavy pounding. "1 second," I told my boss, muting the mic. I opened the door to find 2 uniformed officers. They looked tired. One of them, a guy with the name tag Miller, looked like he had been dealing with Mrs. Gable-type situation since the dawn of time. "Sir, we received a complaint," Officer Miller said. He didn't even sound like he believed it. "Let me guess," I said, leaning against the door frame. "Mrs. Gable?" Miller exchanged a look with his partner. "We can't disclose the complainant, but yeah, she claims you're running an illegal surveillance operation targeting her bathroom window." I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. "Officer, come here." I walked them out to the porch. I pointed to the doorbell. "It's a doorbell. It points at the street. Unless her bathroom is located in the middle of Elm Avenue, I think we're good." Miller leaned in. He looked at the lens. He looked at Mrs. Gable's house. Her bathroom window was indeed visible, but it was on the second floor, way off to the side. The camera had a wide-angle lens, but it wasn't a sniper scope. "Can I see the feed?" Miller asked. I pulled out my phone. I showed him the live view. It showed the tops of the officers' heads and the empty street. "See?" I said. "No bathrooms, just the exciting world of asphalt." Miller sighed. He rubbed his temples. "Look, sir, technically you're fine, but she calls us a lot, like a lot. If you could just maybe angle it a little more to the left, just to keep the peace?" "Angle it to the left?" I asked, incredulous. "Then I'd be filming my own wall. That defeats the purpose." "I know," Miller said. "I know, but do you want to be right, or do you want to be happy?" "I want to be safe," I said. "She's aggressive. She screams at my contractors. She takes photos of me. I need this record." Miller nodded slowly. "All right. Just try not to escalate it." He walked away. I watched him go over to Mrs. Gable's house. She was waiting on her porch. I saw her gesturing wildly, pointing at me, pointing at the camera, pointing at the sky. Miller just stood there, nodding. Probably dissociating to a happy place where neighbors were sane and paperwork didn't exist. That night I checked the footage before bed. All quiet. Just the moths fluttering around the porch light. I went to sleep feeling vindicated. The law was on my side. Technology was on my side. I woke up at 6 a.m. to the sound of nothing. Usually the birds were chirping, but today silence. I rolled over and grabbed my phone to check the notifications. Camera offline, 3:42 a.m. My stomach dropped. I sat up. "No!" I ran downstairs, almost tripping over a box of tiles. I threw open the front door. The mounting bracket was there. The wires were there, sticking out like broken veins. The camera was gone. I stood there, barefoot on the cold concrete. I looked over at Mrs. Gable's house. Her blinds were drawn tight. But I just knew. I marched over to her house. I didn't care that it was 6:05 a.m. I pounded on her door. "Bang, bang, bang, Mrs. Gable! I know you took it!" Silence. "I have the footage," I lied. "It uploads to the cloud." The door didn't open. Instead, the window next to the door slid up about 2 inches. "Get off my property!" her voice shrieked from the darkness. "Or I'm calling the police for harassment." "You stole my camera," I yelled back. "Give it back." "I don't know what you're talking about," she hissed. "Maybe the wind took it. Or maybe it was trash and the garbage men did their job. Now leave." The window slammed shut. I stood there, vibrating with rage. The wind didn't take a screwed-in doorbell camera. The garbage men didn't climb onto my porch at 3:42 a.m. I went back to my house and checked the app again. The last footage was from 3:41 a.m. It showed nothing. Then blackness. She must have cut the power or jammed the Wi-Fi. She was smarter than she looked. When Sully arrived at 7 o'clock, he found me sitting on a bucket of drywall mud, staring at the empty spot on the wall. "She got it, didn't she?" Sully asked, not even looking surprised. "She got it," I said. Sully whistled. Bold, old school. I respect the hustle, honestly. "I'm calling the cops," I said. "And tell 'em what?" Sully asked, lighting a cigarette. "You got no video of her doing it, no witnesses. It's your word against a sweet old lady." "She is not sweet," I snapped. "She is a gargoyle." "Doesn't matter," Sully said. "Cops ain't gonna raid a grandma's house for a $100 doorbell. You're playing checkers, kid. She's playing 4D chess." "So what do I do?" I asked, looking at him. "Just let her win?" Sully took a drag and blew the smoke toward her house. Nah, you don't let her win. But you can't beat her with rules. She owns the rules. You gotta get creative. I looked at the wires. I looked at Mrs. Gable's house. Sully was right. The direct approach had failed. The legal approach was useless. Creative, I whispered. Careful, though, Sully warned. You start a war with a neighbor, you better be ready to finish it. You gotta live here. She ain't moving. Neither am I said. That afternoon, I bought a second camera. This one was cheaper. A decoy. I put it up. I even put a little sign next to it. Smile, you're on camera. It lasted 3 days. This time, I was awake. I heard a noise outside. A scraping sound. I jumped out of bed, grabbed a baseball bat. Why? I don't know, instinct, and ran to the door. I threw it open. The street was empty. The camera was gone. I ran to the edge of the porch. I looked toward her house. I saw the back of a robe disappearing around the corner of her garage. I saw you! I screamed into the night. I saw you, Gable! A light flicked on in her upstairs window, then off. I checked the trash cans the next morning. My camera was in my own recycling bin, smashed to pieces with what looked like a hammer. She hadn't even bothered to hide it. She wanted me to find it. It was a message. I can touch you, but you can't touch me. I called the non-emergency line again. A different officer this time. Officer Davis. Young. Bored. Did you see her take it? He asked, writing in his notebook. I saw a robe, I said. And she's the only one who hates me. A robe isn't a positive ID, sir, Davis said. And finding it in your own trash, technically it's still on your property. It's malicious mischief, maybe, but without video evidence. I can't get video evidence because she steals the cameras that take the video, I shouted. I sounded crazy. I knew I sounded crazy. It's a civil matter, Davis said, closing his notebook. The 3 magic words that mean we aren't going to do anything. Maybe try mediation? Mediation, I repeated, with a woman who smashes electronics with a hammer. Good luck, sir, Davis said, and left. I went back inside. Sully was installing the new kitchen island. He looked at my face. Civil matter? He guessed. Civil matter, I confirmed. I sat down at the unfinished island. I put my head in my hands. I was defeated. I was a man broken by a senior citizen in floral print. You know, Sully said, measuring a piece of trim. My cousin, he works in car security, LoJack, that sort of thing. I lifted my head. So? So, Sully said, technology is getting small these days. Real small. You can hide a tracker in just about anything. A wallet, a set of keys. He tapped his hammer on the countertop. Or a doorbell. I looked at Sully. A slow smile spread across his dusty, bearded face. You thinking what I'm thinking? He asked. I looked at the smashed remains of camera hash 2 on the counter. Sully, I said, I think we need to go shopping. I'll drive, he said. My truck scares her. This wasn't just about a doorbell anymore. This was about justice. This was about reclaiming the neighborhood. Mrs. Gable had stolen my peace of mind. She had stolen my property. She thought she was untouchable in her fortress of HOA bylaws and lack of evidence. But she made one mistake. She assumed the next camera would be just a camera. She didn't know she was about to steal a Trojan horse. We treated the hardware store run like a tactical supply drop. Sully drove, mostly because his truck was the only vehicle capable of holding the amount of nervous energy I was radiating, but also because he wanted to stop for breakfast burritos the size of toddlers' legs. We sat in the parking lot of a Buy More Tech superstore, grease dripping onto the dashboard, plotting the downfall of a geriatric tyrant. So, Sully said, chewing with the slow, deliberate rhythm of a cow contemplating philosophy. We need a shell. Something that looks expensive but is actually hollow, like a politician. And the tracker, I added, wiping salsa off my chin. It has to be accurate. I need to know if she takes it to the bathroom. I need to know if she takes it to church. I want to see the dot move. We went inside. I don't know if you've ever tried to explain to a 19-year-old electronics store employee named Braden that you need to purchase a high-end video doorbell solely for the purpose of destroying it, but it's a unique experience. Braden, bless his heart, tried to sell me the cloud storage plan. Bro, Braden said, adjusting his blue polo, which was 3 sizes too big. The cloud is where it's at. Infinite rewind. Braden, I said, grabbing his shoulder with a little too much intensity. I don't need the cloud. I need the shell. I need the physical vessel. And I need a GPS tag that can track a pebble through a lead bunker. Do you have anything that military drones use? Braden blinked. We have air tags? And those tile things? Get me 4, I said. And the doorbell, the most expensive one. The one with the gold trim. She likes gold. It makes her feel superior. We returned to my house, my command center, and set up shop on the kitchen island. This was Operation Trojan Horse. Sully cleared away the sawdust and laid out the tools. A set of precision screwdrivers, a tube of industrial-strength epoxy, a soldering iron, which we didn't actually need, but Sully felt it added to the ambiance, and a roll of duct tape. All right, Sully said, cracking his knuckles. Let's perform surgery. I felt like Dr. Frankenstein if Frankenstein was fueled by spite and bad coffee. We carefully opened the casing of the brand-new $300 doorbell. It was a beautiful piece of technology. Circuit boards, camera lenses, delicate wiring. Gut it, I ordered. Sully looked at me. You sure this is a lot of money to turn into a maraca? She destroyed my peace, Sully. This is a small price to pay for justice. Gut it. Sully used a pair of pliers to rip out the motherboard. The sickening crunch of silicon snapping was music to my ears. We hollowed that thing out until it was just a plastic husk, a ghost of its former self. Then, we took the GPS tracker. I had named it the Snitch in the app, and activated it. I tested it by having Sully walk to the backyard. The dot on my phone moved perfectly. Okay, I said, my hands trembling slightly as I mixed the epoxy. Let's mount the payload. We glued the tracker to the inside of the casing. Ensuring it was balanced so the doorbell wouldn't feel suspiciously light. Then, we filled the empty space with some old washers and nuts to give it the proper heft. Weight implies value. Weight implies quality. We sealed it back up. It looked perfect. It looked pristine. It looked like the holy grail of porch surveillance. Now for the bait, Sully said. We went outside. It was mid-afternoon. Mrs. Gable was nowhere to be seen, which meant she was watching. She was always watching. I mounted the bracket to the wall. But here was the genius of the plan, the chaotic evil element. Normally you use a security screw, a special little star-shaped demon that requires a specific tool to remove. I didn't use that. I used a standard Phillips head screw, and I didn't tighten it all the way. I left it just loose enough that if you wiggled it, it would move. It was practically begging to be taken. It was the doorbell equivalent of a wallet left on a bar stool. It's too easy, Sully whispered, admiring our handiwork. It's an insult to her intelligence. That's the point, I replied. Her arrogance is her weakness. She thinks I'm incompetent. She thinks I just put up another camera because I'm stupid. She won't be able to resist correcting my mistake. We stepped back. The golden trim caught the afternoon sun. It was beautiful. It was a trap. Then the waiting began. I thought the theft would happen that first night. I stayed up until 4 a.m., sitting in the dark of my living room, staring at my phone, waiting for the dot to move. I drank 3 Red Bulls. I started naming the dust bunnies under the couch. Nothing. The next day was torture. The renovation continued. Pete, the electrician, showed up to wire the new recessed lighting. Pete was a wiry guy who vibrated on a frequency that suggested he had licked a few too many live wires in his day. You look like hell, Jack, Pete said, climbing down from a ladder. I am a hunter, Pete, I muttered, staring out the window. I am lying in wait for the beast. Right, Pete said, slowly backing away. Hey, the lady next door yelled at me about my radio frequency interfering with her pacemaker. Does she have a pacemaker? She doesn't have a heart, Pete, so I doubt it. Day 2 passed. Nothing. Mrs. Gable was playing the long game. She was out in her yard, watering the hydrangeas, looking the picture of suburban innocence. She even waved at the mailman. It was sickening. She knew the camera was there. I saw her glance at it. A quick, darting look. She was assessing it. She was calculating. By the third night, I was starting to crack. Maybe she knew. Maybe she had a counter-surveillance team. Maybe she was ex-CIA. Sully, I said on the morning of the fourth day, she's not taking the bait. Maybe we made it too obvious? Sully was eating a cruller. Patience, Grasshopper. Predators don't strike when you're looking. They strike when you get comfortable. He was right. That night a thunderstorm rolled in. It was a classic spooky movie setup. Thunder rattled the window panes. Rain lashed against the siding. It was the kind of noise that covered footsteps, the kind of chaos that masked crimes. I went to bed early, exhausted from 3 days of vigilance. I put my phone on the nightstand, volume turned all the way up. I fell into a fitful sleep. Fun, dreaming of giant clipboards chasing me through a maze of HOA regulations. Then it happened. Ding. A single notification sound. My eyes snapped open. I didn't breathe. I grabbed the phone. The snitch. Item detected, moving. I sat up in bed, heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I opened the Find My app. The map loaded. The blue dot, me, was in the bedroom. The item icon, a little suitcase emoji, was at the front door. I watched, mesmerized. The icon moved away from the house. It moved down the driveway. Yes, I hissed into the darkness. Take it! Take it, you thief! The icon reached the sidewalk. It paused. Was she hesitating? Was she checking for witnesses? The rain was pounding outside, a perfect cover. Then the icon took a sharp left. It crossed the property line. It moved up the adjacent driveway. Gotcha, I whispered. I didn't run to the window. I didn't turn on the lights. I stayed glued to the screen. The icon moved up her walkway. It stopped at her front door. Then, it breached the perimeter. It was inside the house. It kept moving, through the foyer, into the kitchen. Then it took a right turn into what I knew from Zillow floor plans was the dining room. It stopped. I waited 1 minute. 2 minutes. It didn't move. It was sitting there. She had brought the evidence into her lair. I threw off the covers. The adrenaline hit me so hard my hands were shaking. I put on jeans and a hoodie, feeling like a SWAT team leader suiting up for a raid. I dialed 911. 911. What is your emergency? This is not a life-threatening emergency, I said, my voice shockingly calm. But I have a felony theft in progress. Soon, and I am tracking the stolen property in real time to the suspect's residence. Sir, the dispatcher sounded bored. Is the suspect still there? The suspect is my neighbor, I said, and the stolen property is currently sitting on her dining room table. I have GPS confirmation. There was a pause. You have GPS on. What exactly? A doorbell camera. She's stolen 3 of them. This one was baited. Baited? The dispatcher's tone shifted from bored to intrigued. Okay, sir. Officers are in the area. Do not approach the suspect. Let the officers handle it. I wouldn't miss it for the world, I said. I went downstairs and stood on my porch, sheltered from the rain. The streetlights reflected off the wet pavement. 5 minutes later, a cruiser rolled up, no sirens, just a silent shark in the water. And wouldn't you know it? It was Officer Miller again. He stepped out of the car, adjusting his rain jacket. He looked at me standing on the porch. He looked at the empty spot on my door frame where the camera used to be. He walked up the driveway, shaking his head. You again, Miller said. Officer Miller, I grinned. I probably looked manic. Welcome back to the scene of the crime. Dispatcher said something about GPS? Miller asked, sounding skeptical. You sure it's not just a glitch? Those things bounce around sometimes. I held out my phone. I protected it from the rain with my hand. The screen glowed in the night. Look at the precision, officer. It's not bouncing. It has been stationary for 12 minutes. 44 Elm Street, dining room, north side of the house. Miller looked at the map. He zoomed in. He looked at Mrs. Gable's house. He looked back at the map. Well, Miller said, a small smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. I'll be damned. That is probable cause, isn't it? I asked. It certainly gives us a reason to knock, Miller said. He motioned to his partner, a younger female officer I hadn't met. "Let's go say hello to Mrs. Gable." I followed them. I knew I should stay back, but I couldn't. I stayed on the sidewalk, just at the edge of her property line, the rain soaking my hoodie, watching the play unfold. Miller walked up to her door. He didn't use the doorbell. She probably would have critiqued his ringing technique. He knocked, sharp, authoritative raps. Bang, bang, bang! Police! Open up! The house remained dark for a moment. Then the porch light flicked on. The door opened a crack. Mrs. Gable peered out. She was wearing a pink bathrobe that looked like it was made of towel material. She looked confused, sleepy, and, for the first time, slightly small. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, though her voice lacked its usual venom. "It's 2 a.m. "Mrs. Gable," Miller said, his voice projecting clearly over the rain. "We're investigating a theft that occurred moments ago at the property next door." "Theft?" She scoffed. She actually scoffed at the police. "I don't know anything about a theft. Go ask the hooligans downtown." "Mrs. Gable," Miller continued, stepping closer. "The stolen property is equipped with a GPS tracker. That tracker is currently signaling that the property is inside your house." I saw her face change. It was subtle. A flicker of the eyes, a tightening of the mouth. The realization that the game had changed. "That's ridiculous," she stammered. "Electronics malfunction, everyone knows that. I don't have anything." "Mrs. Gable," Miller said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming serious. "If we have to get a warrant based on this tracking data, we will. And then we will search the entire premises. Or you can save us the paperwork and hand it over." She hesitated. She looked past Miller. She saw me standing on the sidewalk, holding my phone like a torch of victory, our eyes locked. For a second, I thought she was going to double down. I thought she was going to slam the door and force a siege. But Mrs. Gable was, above all else, concerned with appearances. A warrant meant a scene. A warrant meant more police cars. A warrant meant the rest of the neighborhood waking up. She started. "I found something on my lawn. I brought it inside for safekeeping. To return it in the morning. I didn't want it to get wet." "It's an outdoor camera, ma'am," Miller said dryly. "It's designed to get wet." "I was being a good neighbor," she snapped, trying to regain her footing. "Can we see it?" Miller asked. She sighed, a heavy, dramatic sound of a martyr being persecuted. She opened the door wider. "It's on the table." Miller gestured for her to step back. He and his partner walked in. I couldn't hear what was being said inside, but I could see through the sheer curtains of the dining room window. I saw Miller walk to the table. I saw him pick up the gold-trimmed doorbell. He turned it over in his hands. He nodded. They came back out a moment later. Miller was holding the camera in an evidence bag. "Mrs. Gable," Miller said, standing on her porch. "You're going to be cited for theft and possession of stolen property. We're going to release you on a summons, but you will have a court date." "This is harassment!" she shrieked, her voice finally hitting that familiar, ear-splitting pitch. "He planted it. He's trying to frame me." "Ma'am, you just admitted you took it," Miller said. "Sign here." He handed her a clipboard. The irony was so delicious I could taste it. The woman who lived by the clipboard was now dying by the clipboard. She signed it with a furious scribble, practically tearing the paper. "Good night, ma'am," Miller said. He walked down the driveway to where I was standing. He handed me the evidence bag. "Technically, I should keep this," Miller said. "But since we caught her red-handed and she admitted it, take your toy back. But do me a favor." "Anything, officer." "Bolt the next one down. Use cement if you have to. I don't want to come back here next week." "You won't have to," I promised. Miller got in his car. As he drove away, I looked back at Mrs. Gable's house. She was still standing in the doorway, watching me. I raised the evidence bag in a silent toast. She slammed her door so hard, I felt the vibration through the soles of my sneakers. I walked back into my house, dripping wet, shivering, and absolutely euphoric. I placed the rescued camera on the kitchen island next to the epoxy and the tools. Sully was going to lose his mind when I told him. The next morning, the sun came out. It was a beautiful, clear day. The storm had washed everything clean. Sully arrived at 7 a.m. sharp with a box of donuts. He took one look at the camera sitting on the counter and let out a laugh that shook the windows. "No way," he boomed. "You got her?" "We got her," I said, recounting the story while eating a chocolate glazed. "Dining room table?" Sully asked, wiping a tear from his eye. "She put it on the dining room table?" "Like a trophy," I said. We spent the rest of the morning reinstalling the camera. But this time, we didn't use the regular bracket. Sully welded a custom steel cage that went over the camera. We used 6-inch lag bolts to anchor it into the studs. You would need a stick of dynamite to get that doorbell off the wall now. Mrs. Gable didn't come out that day. Or the next. Her blinds remained drawn. The neighborhood was quiet. A week later, I received a letter in the mail. I braced myself for a lawsuit or a fine. It was from the HOA board. "Dear resident, please be advised that Mrs. Gable has voluntarily stepped down from her position as president of the architectural committee to focus on personal legal matters. An interim president will be elected shortly." I walked out to my porch. I looked at my indestructible, cage-protected doorbell. I looked at the neatly trimmed grass. Pete the electrician walked out the front door, packing up his tools. "Hey, Jack," he said. "House is looking good, almost done." "Yeah," I said, taking a deep breath of the suburban air. "It's finally starting to feel like home." I looked over at the neighbor's house. A single slat in the blinds moved. An eye peered out. I smiled and waved right at the window. The slat snapped shut. "Good fences make good neighbors," Robert Frost once wrote. He was right. But sometimes, when fences aren't enough, a little bit of epoxy, a GPS tracker, and a petty streak a mile wide can work wonders too. I went inside and closed the door. I had a renovation to finish, and for the first time since I moved in, I knew exactly who was ringing the bell.